Chapter 1. The Hard-Working Husband. The sun had long disappeared behind the skyline when Jason pulled his dusty F-250 into the driveway. The house lights were on, but the front door was still locked, a small but familiar sign no one was waiting up for him. He exhaled, the scent of grease, sweat, and freshly poured asphalt clinging to his clothes like a second skin. His boots hit the porch heavy. His back ached. 12 hours straight on the site, 3 machines down, and one rookie nearly took out a power line. Typical Thursday. He jingled the keys in his calloused hand, the cold caterpillar fob smacking against his thumb as he unlocked the door and stepped inside. The living room was dim, lit only by the glow of the big screen TV and the soft halo from her phone. Vanessa sat cross-legged on the couch, wearing a silky robe that looked more decorative than functional. Her face was bathed in blue light, scrolling something intently. Probably Instagram, or maybe Pinterest, pretending to plan a dinner party she'd never actually host. She didn't look up. "Hey," Jason said, shutting the door gently behind him. His voice felt heavier than usual. Only then did she glance over, barely a flicker of interest in her eyes. "You're always working, Jason. Maybe if you were around more." Her voice trailed off dismissively as she turned back to her phone. "No, hi. No, how was your day?" Not even a look at him, dust-covered boots, sore hands, aching back and all. Jason stood there for a second, feeling the gap between them stretch wider than the square footage of the room. He reached down and unbuckled his work belt, dropping it with a metallic clank near the shoe rack. His hands were raw, a small gash across his palms still fresh from earlier, caught on a jagged rebar tie around noon. No bandage, no complaint. "Long day," he said, trying to keep it light. "We had to pour over 40 yards of concrete today, and the new guy, Trey, nearly ran the skid steer into a generator." Vanessa replied, still scrolling. He took a moment to look at her. Same face he'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. Same soft hazel eyes, perfectly arched brows, and that delicate scar above her lip she used to be self-conscious about, but now barely covered. But there was something missing, a shine that used to light up when he walked in, a warmth. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of tap water, and drank it all in one go. The fridge buzzed quietly. Leftovers sat in their containers, untouched. She hadn't cooked. Again, Jason wasn't the kind of guy who needed a 5-star dinner or scented candles. But he noticed the small things. Lately, all those things had started to vanish, like ghosts of a life they used to have. He leaned back against the counter, staring at the family photos pinned to the fridge with weak magnets. One of them was from their trip to Yellowstone 2 years ago. He remembered the way Vanessa leaned into him, laughing as a bison blocked their hiking path. Her eyes had been alive then. Now, they barely even registered him. He headed for the shower, stripped down, stood under the hot spray until his shoulders began to unclench. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion anymore, it was something deeper. The silence, the emotional vacancy. As steam rose around him, his mind drifted back to when they first met. They were both broke college kids at a party neither of them wanted to be at. She was drinking cheap wine out of a red Solo cup, rolling her eyes at a guy trying way too hard to impress her with stories about his gym routine. Jason had walked up and said, "You look like you'd rather be cleaning gutters." She'd laughed so hard she snorted. That laugh used to be his favorite sound. They were passionate back then. Wild road trips, spontaneous fast food dates, making love in the back seat of his beat-up truck while watching the stars. Vanessa used to look at him like he was the only person in the world that made her feel safe. Where did that go? When he stepped out of the shower and into their bedroom, Vanessa was already under the covers, phone still glowing in her hand. "You want anything?" he asked, towel slung over his shoulder. "Nope," she said curtly. "Already ate." Jason nodded, changed into shorts and a plain t-shirt, crawled in the other side of the bed. She angled her body slightly away from him again. They used to cuddle, fall asleep tangled together like vines. Now they slept like strangers with a country mile of bedsheet between them. Jason stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to her scroll. Click, scroll, click. "You good?" he asked quietly. She didn't respond. He knew what was happening. Not fully, not with proof. But his gut wasn't stupid. The late-night texts, the locked phone, The long showers, the sudden workouts, and perfume, the disinterest, the distance. Still, he told himself what he always did. She's just stressed. I work too much. It's my fault too. I haven't been romantic. I haven't been home. The silence stretched so long it swallowed him. Eventually her phone dimmed, and she rolled away without a word. Jason lay awake long after. The next morning, he stood in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, eyes tired and bloodshot. Vanessa passed behind him in a blur of perfume and tight slacks. "You got any plans this weekend?" he asked. She didn't meet his eyes as she applied her lipstick. "There's a conference in the city. Brandon's putting us up at the Hilton. Mandatory." Jason forced a smile. "I was actually going to surprise you. Rented a cabin upstate. Just the two of us. Thought we could use the time." Vanessa paused for a beat, just one, then turned, brushing past him with her purse already slung over her shoulder. "Rain check," she said coolly. "This work trip is important." The door closed behind her before he could reply, and Jason just stood there in the bathroom, toothbrush still in hand, staring into the mirror at a man who suddenly felt like he didn't recognize himself anymore. Chapter 2. The Smell of Lies. The first time Jason noticed it, he thought maybe he was imagining things. It was a Tuesday, nothing special about it. Just another long day in the dirt and heat, followed by another quiet walk through his own front door. Vanessa was in the kitchen when he came in, standing with her back to him, rummaging through the pantry in one of her silk blouses and tight office skirts. He stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chest still warm from the sun, lips brushing her neck. But he froze. There's a scent, sharp, expensive, sweet, but musky. A perfume he'd never smelled on her before. Not the subtle vanilla she used to wear when they went on dates, not the floral body spray from her gym bag. This one was bolder, exotic, something you wore when you wanted to be noticed. "You smell different," he said, trying to keep his voice casual, teasing. She hesitated a fraction too long. "It's probably someone at the office," she said. "Scent transfer. You know how it is." He raised a brow. "Right, scent transfer. Okay." She pulled away like the embrace had gotten too heavy and laughed. "Don't be weird, Jason. Seriously." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That night, after dinner, she sat on the couch texting. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Her fingers moved fast, and every few messages she'd bite her lip and giggle. Jason leaned in from across the room. "Who's got you laughing like that?" She looked up quickly, blinking as if she forgot he was even there. "What?" "Your phone. You've been laughing nonstop for 10 minutes. "Oh, just Ashley. She sent me a meme." Jason forced a chuckle and nodded, but his gut twisted in a way he couldn't ignore. Ashley didn't even have a sense of humor. He tried to push it aside. He really did. But over the next few days, the little things piled up like concrete blocks on his chest. She started sleeping with her phone face down. Then it never left her hand. Even when she went to the bathroom, it was clutched like a lifeline. Once, he caught her changing the passcode. She turned away from him as she typed, fast and careful. She barely spoke at night anymore. The late-night talks they used to share, those quiet, vulnerable moments under the covers had vanished. Now it was just the glow of her screen and the quiet click-click-click of her typing. We tried to spoon her. She shifted away. "Not tonight," she murmured. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I'm just tired, Jason. Can't you understand that?" That became the new phrase, a shield she raised against every question, every attempt to reach her. Just tired. Jason lay awake more and more, staring at the ceiling while she curled up on the opposite edge of the bed, like it was a battlefield they had divided in silence. The loneliness crept in like a slow leak in a pipe, quiet at first, but steady. He started noticing other changes too. New clothes, expensive ones. Designer heels he didn't recognize. Lingerie sets in the laundry he'd never seen her wear. Not for him, at least. He found a Victoria's Secret bag in the closet. Black lace. A satin robe. Tag still on. They hadn't had sex in nearly a month. So who was she wearing it for? He wanted to confront her. God, he ached to confront her. To hold the receipts in her face and demand answers. But every time he tried, her icy tone shut him down. "Don't start," she'd say. "You're being paranoid." "Jason, I'm working hard. Can't I enjoy something for myself?" Or worst of all, if you don't trust me, maybe we've got bigger problems. He started staying late at job sites. Not because he had to, but because at least at work, the silence made sense. At least out there, the machinery roared louder than the thoughts in his head. Luis, one of his guys on site, noticed a shift. "You all right, man?" he asked one afternoon while they were cutting rebar. "You've been zoned out a lot lately." Jason hesitated, then wiped the sweat from his brow. "Just home stuff." Luis gave him a knowing look. "Wife?" Jason nodded slowly. "She cheating?" Jason's body went stiff. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," Luis said. "You've got the same look my brother did before he caught his ex on Tinder. Pay attention to the signs." "Good, don't lie." Jason said nothing, but Luis's words stayed with him. That night, Jason made a mental list. Perfume that wasn't hers. Locked phone. Giggling at midnight. Expensive underwear. Cold bed. Passive-aggressive distance. And one more thing, a name. Brandon Landon. Vanessa mentioned him a few times lately. Her new boss, the high-powered real estate developer who drove a flashy SUV and wore tailored suits. Jason hadn't met him yet, but something about the way she said his name made Jason's stomach turn. She talked about Brandon the way someone talks about a celebrity crush. Too much admiration. Too much emphasis. And when she spoke of her job now, it wasn't about houses or clients. It was always Brandon this, Brandon that. Jason replayed one conversation in his mind. "He's just brilliant, Jason. You wouldn't believe how much he knows about market trends." "Sounds like a smart guy," Jason had said dryly. She didn't pick up on the sarcasm. "Honestly, I'm learning more from him in a week than I did in a year with my last manager." Now, Jason couldn't help but wonder, what else was she learning? He sat in the garage late that night, the F-250's hood still open, pretending to tinker with something just to avoid going inside. His hands were black with grease, but the engine wasn't broken. Something else was. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a notepad. On the front, he scribbled one name, Brandon Landon, then circled it. Twice. Chapter 3. The Boss. Jason hated dressing up, but that night, he stood in front of the bedroom mirror, trying to flatten the collar of his stiff button-up shirt, while Vanessa flitted around behind him like a storm of perfume and heels. She looked stunning, of course, sleek black dress, gold earrings, and flawless makeup. She'd spent the last hour getting ready. Hair ironed, lips glossy, smelling like that new perfume again. Not the scent of familiarity. Not the scent of home. "Try not to look so uncomfortable," she said, adjusting his collar with a small frown. "You clean up nice when you try." Jason forced a grin. "Gee, thanks. It's just a quick cocktail event," she added, grabbing her clutch. "I promised Brandon I'd come. It's networking. Part of the job." There was again Brandon. That name had been circling Jason's head like a vulture for weeks. They drove into the city in silence. She scrolled her phone, replying to texts, fingers moving fast. Jason sat behind the wheel, watching the skyline grow, hands tight around the steering wheel. The venue was some high-rise downtown, one of those rooftop bars with glass walls and ambient jazz. Jason stepped into the elevator beside Vanessa, his steel-toe boots swapped out for brown leather shoes that pinched his toes. He felt out of place before the doors even opened. Inside, the room shimmered with suits, champagne, and fake smiles. Vanessa lit up instantly, laughing and gliding into conversations with practiced ease. Jason trailed her like a ghost, holding a sweating glass of whiskey, nodding politely to people he didn't know and would never see again. "Come meet Brandon," Vanessa said suddenly, grabbing his arm with manicured fingers. "He's over here." Jason followed her across the rooftop to where a group of sharply dressed executives stood near the bar. And then he saw him. Brandon Landon. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Tan skin, salt and pepper hair, slicked back with precision, square jaw, Rolex that glinted like a spotlight. He was the kind of man you didn't want your wife around if you had insecurities. And right now, Jason had more than he wanted to admit. Brandon turned, smiling like a politician. "So this is the famous Jason," he said, offering his hand. His grip was firm, but unnecessary, overcompensating. "You must be proud of your wife. She's absolutely killing it." Jason shook his hand. "I am. She works hard." Brandon smiled wider. She's sharp. Real talent. Not a lot of that these days. Jason noticed how Brandon looked at Vanessa. Not just appreciation. Possession. Like he'd already had her. Like Jason was the one out of place in this scene. Vanessa laughed a little too loud at one of Brandon's jokes about clients being walking bank accounts. She leaned in close to him, touched his arm gently as she made a remark about a nightmare closing last week. Jason stood to the side, swirling his drink and watching. Every time Vanessa smiled, Brandon smirked like they shared a secret. Every time she touched him, Jason felt something inside him twist. He excused himself and stepped out onto the balcony for air. The city lights spread before him, dazzling and detached. The kind of view that makes you feel small and unimportant. He stared out for a long minute, just breathing. Behind him, the laughter continued. He could still hear Vanessa's voice. Could still hear Brandon's name rolling off her tongue like honey. Jason's jaw clenched. He wasn't the jealous type. Never had been. But this was different. This wasn't insecurity, it was instinct. That gut-level sense that something was already gone, and everyone but him knew it. They left the party around 11. Vanessa was tipsy, humming to herself as they walked to the car. Fun night, right? She asked, smiling lazily. Jason opened the passenger door for her. Sure. She didn't notice the tightness in his tone. Or maybe she just didn't care. Back home, she stripped out of her dress and tossed it over a chair, humming some pop song as she walked into the bathroom. Jason sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand. It buzzed once. Then again. His heart thudded. She left it unlocked. He picked it up and flipped the screen open. Nothing. No text from Brandon. No DMs. No photos. Clean. Too clean. The notifications were turned off. Messages deleted. Call logs empty. Even her WhatsApp was cleared out. Jason stared at the blank app screen, the little blinking cursor mocking him. She wasn't just hiding something. She was working to hide it. The next morning, Vanessa left early for a brunch meeting with her coworker Ashley. Jason didn't go into work. He told Luis he needed the day off to deal with something personal. After she left, he searched the bedroom. Her purse, her laptop, the bathroom drawers. Nothing concrete. But then, in the kitchen trash bin, buried under eggshells and coffee filters, he found it. A crumpled Uber receipt. He smoothed it out, eyes scanning the destination. Downtown, the Highcrest Hotel. Drop-off time, 9:42 p.m., just 3 nights ago. 3 nights ago, she told him she was driving to her mother's place across town for a girls' night. Said she'd be sleeping there. Jason stared at the address, his pulse pounding in his ears. The Highcrest was no place for a girls' night. It was upscale, private, room service optional. His breath caught in his throat. It felt like gravity shifted under his feet. There it was, a name in his gut, a night she lied, and now a receipt that didn't match the story. Chapter 4. Voices in the Dark. Jason stood in the electronics aisle of the Walmart on the edge of town, staring blankly at the rows of small, black plastic devices hanging in packages. He picked up one labeled Mini Digital Voice Recorder, 36-hour battery. It was cheap, too simple to be anything special. But that's what he needed. Something small, discreet, disposable. He paid in cash. By the time he got home, Vanessa was already upstairs. Her car was in the driveway. Her favorite heels kicked off near the front door like she'd rushed inside. Probably showering, or setting the mood. Jason walked slowly through the living room, past the picture frames and the faux wedding photos that now felt like a parody. He opened the blister packaging carefully and set up the device. No special skills needed. Just hit record and place it where the lies happened. He lifted the edge of the bed and slid the recorder beneath the frame, next to the wall on her side. If she noticed it during her fake sleep routine, so be it. That night, she was affectionate for the first time in weeks. "You're quiet tonight," Vanessa said, slipping into the covers beside him. "Everything okay?" Jason nodded, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan. "Yeah, just tired." He didn't try to hold her, didn't reach across the bed. She didn't ask. Within minutes, she was asleep, back turned to him, phone in hand one last time under the blankets before it dimmed. Jason lay motionless, eyes open in the dark. His thoughts churned like concrete in a mixer. The silence in the room felt louder than any scream. He waited until her breathing deepened, then slid out of bed quietly and walked downstairs to the den. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, fingers drumming against each other like a nervous tick. The clock on the wall ticked once, then again, each second louder than the last. By 3:10 a.m., he heard movement above him, floorboards creaking. A whisper, soft laughter. She wasn't asleep. She'd never been asleep. He didn't sleep either. The next day dragged. He forced himself through work like a zombie, barely speaking. Luis noticed. "You look like you've seen a ghost, man," he said at lunch. "You all right?" Jason forced a shrug. "Didn't sleep?" Luis studied him for a second. "You getting close to something?" "A hunch." Jason didn't answer. That night, after Vanessa left for a girls' spa night, Jason returned to their bedroom and retrieved the recorder. It felt heavier than it should have. His palms were slick with sweat as he connected it to his laptop and hit play. Static. Silence. The low creak of the mattress. Then voices. First her giggle. Breathless, flirtatious, unfamiliar. Then his voice. "Missed me," Brandon said, his voice smooth like whiskey. Confident. Too confident. Always, Vanessa purred. Jason's stomach twisted. Then the sounds began, wet, rhythmic, unmistakable. Moaning. Flesh meeting flesh. Her breath hitched, high-pitched and frantic. She wasn't quiet. She wasn't subtle. She wasn't ashamed. Jason's hands clenched the edge of the desk. He wanted to stop listening. Every fiber of his body screamed at him to shut it off, to throw the laptop against the wall. But he couldn't. He needed to hear it, needed to burn it into memory, because pain was the only thing keeping him from falling apart completely. Then, in the middle of the noise, Brandon's voice, arrogant and low. "You ever scream like this for your husband?" Jason's chest tightened. There was a pause. Then a laugh, her laugh, cruel and sharp. "Only when I fake it." The world stopped. Jason leaned forward, elbows on his knees, breathing hard. He stared at the carpet like it had betrayed him too. His shoulders shook, not from sadness, but from rage. Silent, volcanic rage. She didn't just cheat. She didn't just lie. She ridiculed him. Everything they had built, the house, the memories, the 6 years of sacrifice, reduced to a joke in her mouth. A lie she told with a moan and a smirk while another man filled the bed Jason had paid for. His hands trembled as he stopped the recording. His reflection in the black screen stared back at him, haunted, hollow. He thought of the first time they made love under that crappy ceiling fan in their first apartment. She'd pulled him close afterward and whispered, "You're the only man who's ever made me feel safe." She'd said it like it was sacred, like it was truth. Now, Jason realized she lied about that too. Chapter 5. Let me finish. The morning started like any other. Jason was up at 5:30 a.m., brewing his coffee in silence while the rest of the house slept. The sun hadn't even stretched over the trees yet, and everything was still and dim. Vanessa wouldn't be up for another hour, not unless she had somewhere to be. Jason moved methodically, pouring his black coffee into a dented thermos, slipping into his dusty jeans and scuffed work boots. But today, he didn't pack lunch. Today, he wasn't going to the site. Instead, he quietly backed his truck out of the driveway, just before 6, same as always. He even waved to the neighbor walking his dog, keeping the routine clean, predictable. But 3 blocks down, he pulled into a side alley, parked behind a closed-down auto shop, and killed the engine. He sat there, alone in the early morning gray, breathing slowly, waiting. This wasn't rage. This was strategy. He checked his watch. 6:42 a.m. Vanessa would think he was gone. Her day would unfold like she expected. No suspicion, no deviations. Jason leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. This was the day. By noon, the plan was already in motion. He'd texted Luis earlier. "Not feeling great. Taking the day. Cover for me." Luis had replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a "you okay, bro?" Jason ignored it. Instead, at exactly 12:07 p.m., he turned his truck back onto the main road and drove home slowly, deliberately. As he turned onto their street, his breath caught in his throat. There it was, the sleek, black Escalade, shiny, spotless, smug, parked in his driveway like it belonged there. like he belonged there. Jason gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. That car didn't belong in his home. That man didn't belong in his life. He parked 2 houses down, angled slightly out of view, walked the rest of the way on foot, quietly, boots crunching gravel with every step. The summer air was thick, and sweat was already starting to form beneath his collar. As he reached the porch, he noticed the blinds were pulled, something Vanessa never did during the day. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Jason stepped inside, slowly, silently, like a man checking the traps in his own house. The living room was empty. The house smelled faintly of roses and expensive cologne. Music played softly from upstairs, a slow, sensual rhythm vibrating through the walls. His throat tightened. He didn't call out her name. He didn't make a sound. He just moved up the staircase with the weight of 100 dead memories pressing into his spine. Halfway up, the first moan cut through the air. High-pitched, familiar. His jaw clenched. Another sound, a rhythmic thump. Then his voice, Brandon. Jason stopped just outside the bedroom door. It was cracked open, just enough to let the sound pour through. The smell was stronger now, sweat, perfume, and something else. Lust, betrayal, violence wrapped in satin sheets. He stood there, breathing slowly, pulse pounding like a jackhammer in his ears. Then the words hit him. Vanessa's voice, desperate, needy. "Oh God, don't stop. Let me finish. My loser husband will be home soon." Jason blinked once. Just once. Brandon laughed. A deep, arrogant laugh. He didn't stop. Jason pushed the door open. There they were, her legs thrown around Brandon's waist, his back arched, hands gripping her hips like a trophy. Vanessa's eyes rolled back, hair matted to her forehead. And then, her eyes snapped open. She saw him, Jason, standing there, silent, unblinking. The moment should have frozen them, should have made them scream or scramble or hide. But they didn't. Vanessa's face twisted, but not in guilt, in annoyance. Brandon didn't even pause, didn't break rhythm. He smirked as he looked over his shoulder, sweat glistening down his spine. "Guess the losers early," he said. Jason's heart didn't race. His vision didn't blur. He didn't scream or lunge. He just stood there, mechanical, hollow. For a moment, the room felt like it didn't exist, like time had peeled away. The moaning continued. The sheets shifted. His wife, the woman he built a life with, lay beneath another man in the bed Jason had assembled with his own hands. He picked out the paint on those walls, hung the curtains, laid the floorboards, and now she was desecrating all of it without an ounce of shame. Vanessa didn't even cover herself. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She just looked at him like he was the one interrupting. Jason's eyes met hers. She held the gaze for a heartbeat, then turned her head back toward Brandon's chest. That was it. Jason stepped back, one foot then another. No expression, no words. He walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs, out the front door. His boots echoed hollowly on the porch steps. He didn't slam the door. He didn't look back, because inside, everything had already shattered. Chapter 6. Concrete Justice. Jason didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't even feel real as he walked back to his truck. His boots felt like they weren't touching the ground. The world moved around him in slow motion. Birds chirped in the distance. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere down the street. But it all sounded muffled, like he was underwater. He climbed into the cab of the F-250 without looking back at the house. No trembling hands. No blood in his eyes. Just a cold, pulsing stillness. His truck rumbled to life. He pulled away from the driveway and drove in silence, not bothering to check his mirrors. He didn't care if Brandon or Vanessa saw him leave. That part was done. This part, the next part, was for him. It was nearly 1 p.m. when he arrived at the job site. The guys were on break, eating tacos under the scaffolding, laughing over something stupid. Luis waved at him. "Hey, you feeling better?" Jason gave a single nod. "Yeah." Then he walked past them, headed straight for the equipment lot. Luis raised a brow. "You need something?" "Personal errand," Jason said without turning. "I'll bring her back in an hour." Luis opened his mouth like he wanted to press further, but something in Jason's tone stopped him cold. Jason climbed into the Caterpillar front loader. Her name was Maggie, and he'd operated her so many times he didn't even think anymore. Her seat felt like home. The diesel engine coughed, then roared to life. He backed her out, rolled her toward the cement mix pile at the far end of the lot. With slow, practiced movements, he filled the massive bucket full of wet concrete, thick gray, and steaming slightly in the heat. Once full, he tapped the edge twice to settle the mix. He checked the pressure on the hydraulics. Then he drove out of the site. Luis and the others watched in silence. The drive back felt surreal. The world rolled past, the gas stations, the same old diners, kids riding bikes on sidewalks, but Jason barely saw them. His hands were firm on the levers, his foot steady. Maggie roared along the streets like a metal beast answering her master's call. When he turned onto his street, cars pulled over. People stared. Phones went up. Jason didn't care. He rolled the Caterpillar into his driveway like he owned the earth beneath it. Because he did. He built it. He earned it. And now, he was going to remind them who they were messing with. Brandon's Escalade still sat gleaming under the summer sun, like it belonged there, like it was untouchable. Jason parked Maggie alongside it, engine rumbling like a volcano ready to blow. He climbed down, face blank, boots hitting the pavement like thunder. He grabbed a flat shovel and a pipe wrench from the truck bed. People were gathering now, neighbors, teens, bystanders from the street. Some whispered. Some laughed nervously. Phones pointed his way. He heard one guy say, "Dude, is he about to?" Jason didn't speak. He pried open the Escalade's sunroof first. Then he grabbed the shovel, climbed back up on a Maggie's side panel, and began scooping wet concrete into the opening. Schlop. Splash. Heavy slabs of cement hit the leather seats inside. The gray sludge poured down the dash, filled the cup holders, ran over the steering wheel like lava. Someone gasped. He kept going. He jammed the shovel into the vents next. Concrete oozed into the AC system, filled the electronics with wet death. He opened the hood and dumped the rest straight into the engine block, the battery, even the air filter. Chunks fell like corpses into a grave. By the time he was done, the Escalade sagged under the weight of its own destruction. Cement leaked from the seams like blood. Then Jason grabbed the last item, a can of red spray paint. He shook it once, then again, walked calmly to the hood, and in slow, deliberate strokes, he wrote, "Let me finish." Jason, the red letters dripped down the front grille like a warning from hell itself. The silence was thick now. Nobody spoke. A few people backed away, murmuring. Someone clapped quietly. Another whispered, "Dude, respect." Jason didn't say a word. He walked back to Maggie, climbed in, and reversed her out of the driveway like nothing happened. As he turned down the block, he didn't check the mirror, didn't glance back at the house. Let them see it. Let him see it. Let her explain it. Chapter 7. The Mansion Job. Jason sat in his truck that evening with a cheap burner phone on the dashboard and his laptop humming in the passenger seat. The address wasn't hard to find. Brandon Landon wasn't exactly private. A Google search pulled up his real estate portfolio, press interviews, company listings, and finally his home. It was a mansion, an actual, gated, 7-bedroom, Mediterranean-style monster in an exclusive, gated enclave north of the city. White columns, terrace gardens, a 3-car garage that probably held more money than Jason made in a year. A name like the Landon estate engraved into the stone gate like a personal monument. Jason didn't blink. He already knew the gate code before he got there. Posing as a contractor wasn't hard. One call to Brandon's assistant from a block number claiming to be with Elite Pool Maintenance, and the security gate was expecting equipment diagnostics by 10 a.m. sharp. Except Jason wasn't coming with a pool kit. He came with gloves, bolt cutters, and a heart full of cold fire. The next morning, he shaved, put on a clean work shirt, and pulled up to the estate in his truck with 2 ladders strapped to the top and a clipboard under his arm. The guard waved him in without even checking ID. "Third house on the left," the guy said. "Gates open for service." Jason nodded once. Appreciated. He drove slow through the winding driveway. The Landon mansion loomed like a palace above the trees. Manicured hedges, security cameras. Jason counted 3 just on the eaves. He parked off to the side, near the guest house. Timing was everything. He tracked Brandon's calendar through his company's open invites, and social posts. Brandon had a charity brunch that day, one of those champagne and caviar events where everyone pretended to care about orphans and took selfies next to glass sculptures. Jason had 2 hours, maybe less. First stop, the back entrance. He picked the side door lock with unsettling ease. Years of fixing and rebuilding had given him a soft touch when it came to tools. The click echoed in the hallway. Inside, the place smelled of polish and money. Pristine floors, marble columns, oil paintings. All of it offended him. He headed straight for the wine cellar, past the marble staircase, and down through a wrought iron door into the cool vault. Rows of priceless bottles lined wooden shelves. Bordeaux, Burgundy, private label Napa Reserves. Jason looked around, then tipped the first shelf over like knocking down a bookcase. Glass shattered. Wine gushed across the floor like blood. He grabbed a case labeled Romanicani 1990 and hurled it against the wall. One bottle alone was worth more than his entire year's salary. Next, the kitchen. He pulled out the gallon-sized plastic bag of rotting fish guts he'd kept hidden in a cooler all night. Filthy, wet vial. The smell alone could drop a grown man to his knees. He yanked a few wall panels off behind the fridge and stuffed the rotting mass deep into the insulation. Pressed it between the beams. Jammed some into the vents for good measure. It'd be weeks before anyone found it. By then, the entire house would smell like death. He didn't stop there. Jason moved through the living room with calculated rage, sweeping over vases and smashing crystal pieces off the mantel. He took a crowbar to the custom mirror above the fireplace, leaving behind a web of jagged reflection. But the final touch? He pulled the red spray paint can from his tool bag, walked into Brandon's home office, sleek desk, leather chair, awards on the wall, and wrote in massive, dripping letters across the marble. "You took my wife, so I took your name. Ask the internet." He stepped back, admired the stroke of it. Raw, honest, and true, because while he was inside, the burner phone had been uploading. A fresh Instagram account with a single post. A slideshow. Brandon's hotel receipts. Audio clips from the bedroom. Vanessa's moans. Brandon's voice. And the line. "Only when I fake it. No video. No faces. Just voices. Just proof." Enough for anyone who knew Brandon or Vanessa to know exactly what was going on. The post ended with a final caption. "This is what happens when you underestimate the loser husband." Concrete justice. Jason hit publish. Then he pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. Vanessa's wedding ring. The one she used to swear meant everything. He walked to the master bathroom, opened the lid, dropped the ring into Brandon's sparkling porcelain toilet, and flushed. Horror gone, just like her promises. He stood there for a long second, staring at the swirling water. His reflection in the mirror didn't look like the man he remembered from their wedding photos. That man had believed in loyalty, in sacrifice, in love that could weather anything. This man believed in justice. The alarm tripped just as he reached the foyer. Silent at first, then a blaring screech as motion sensors picked him up and sent alerts to security companies and probably the police. Jason didn't flinch. He walked out the front door as the sirens began screaming in the distance, his boots leaving muddy prints across the Landon family's $1,000 Persian rug. Chapter 8. Burnout. Jason's temporary apartment was nothing like the home he'd left behind. No framed wedding pictures. No smell of her perfume lingering on the pillows. Just a worn recliner, a small TV, and a fold-out table covered in unopened mail. A cheap coffee maker hissed quietly in the corner, spitting steam into the dusty air. He sat in the half-dark, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, still in his work boots. The only light came from his laptop screen, where dozens of unread messages and reposts flooded the burner Instagram account. The audio, the receipts, the graffiti. It had gone viral. Brandon's name was trending. Concrete Cuck was everywhere. And Jason? He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gloating. He was just done. That's when the pounding started. Thud, thud, thud. He barely had time to rise before the door was nearly kicked in. It swung open, and Vanessa stormed inside like a thundercloud in heels and mascara tears. Her designer jacket was soaked with rain, and her hair clung to her face in dripping strands. Her eyes were wild. "You son of a bitch," she screamed. You ruined me. Jason stood calmly, coffee still in hand. Brandon dumped me, she gasped, flinging her purse across the room. It hit the wall with a thud. He said I was radioactive. Said the board is talking about removing him. She paced in front of him like a caged animal, panting through clenched teeth. I lost my job. My friends aren't even answering my calls. My mother said I embarrassed the entire family. Jason took a slow sip of coffee. And she stopped. The silence between them was deafening. Her mouth hung open, waiting for something, pity, regret, anything. But Jason's voice was like ice. You lost me the second you let another man into our bed. Vanessa flinched. Her shoulders slumped like a puppet with its strings cut. I was lonely, she whispered. Jason set the mug down. No, you were greedy. You wanted more. More money, more attention, more power. You had everything I could give, and it still wasn't enough. She dropped onto the edge of the couch, makeup streaking her cheeks. He said he'd leave his wife. I believed him. Jason tilted his head. So what now? You thought you'd come here and what, apologize? Cried out? Start over. I don't know, she barked. You destroyed my life. Jason stepped closer. His voice was calm, even. I didn't destroy your life, Vanessa. You did. I just gave the world a front row seat. She looked up at him, her eyes hollow. Everyone hates me now. Jason nodded. Welcome to honesty. By the end of the week, the fallout hit like a nuke. Brandon Landon filed charges, trespassing, vandalism, property destruction. But his timing couldn't have been worse. The internet was having too much fun. The Escalade video, the graffiti, the tagged screenshots of Vanessa moaning with Brandon's voice overlapping. It all exploded on TikTok and Reddit. Someone even auto-tuned the phrase, "Let me finish, my loser husband will be home soon," into a remix. Concrete Cuck trended for 3 straight days. Jason never even logged into the original account again. He didn't need to. The damage was done, and now it had taken on a life of its own. Brandon's company released a bland PR statement. Mr. Landon denies all allegations and maintains his commitment to professional excellence. Nobody bought it. His board temporarily suspended him pending internal review. Sponsorships vanished. His wife's lawyers filed for divorce within a week. Vanessa, meanwhile, was radioactive in her own orbit. Her old friend Jessica posted a brutal takedown on Facebook. Imagine cheating on a man who worked 60-hour weeks to give you a house, then moaning for his boss in his own bed? I hope the ring she flushed haunts her. People share it like wildfire. Her own sister commented under a post with, "This is what happens when you mistake lust for loyalty." Her phone stopped ringing. Invites stopped coming. The house, Jason's house, went up for sale. She couldn't afford the mortgage without Brandon or Jason's name on the account. And through it all, Jason stayed silent. No interviews. No retaliation. Only one thing left to handle. He stood before the judge in a county courthouse a week later. His boots were clean this time, his shirt pressed. The prosecutor laid out the charges. Vandalism, breaking and entering, property damage. Jason didn't flinch. When the judge asked how he pleaded, he stood tall and said, "Guilty." There was a pause. The room held its breath. Then the judge raised a brow. "You're aware this video has gone viral?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You understand you could have taken this to trial?" "I'm not ashamed of what I did," Jason replied. "I just want it behind me." The judge exhaled and leaned back. "In light of your cooperation and the overwhelming public response, this court finds that jail time is not appropriate. You're sentenced to pay restitution and a $1,000 fine. No contact with Mr. Landon." "Understood." Jason nodded. Crystal clear. He walked out of the courthouse to a few scattered claps and someone trying to sneak a selfie with him. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just kept walking. Chapter 9. Rise Again. Jason stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror of the gym locker room, wiping the sweat from his brow. The dark circles under his eyes hadn't disappeared yet, but his jaw was tighter, his shoulders broader, and his posture something closer to pride than defeat. He flexed his fingers and thought about how much he'd lost. More than a wife, more than a house. He'd lost himself. But not anymore. The clanging of weights and rhythmic pounding of feet on treadmills surrounded him. But inside, Jason felt something new, a raw, simmering determination. He wiped down the bench press and nodded to the trainer passing by. Ready for round 2, huh? Jason grinned for the first time in months. Let's do it. Therapy was harder. The first session felt like dragging himself through a mud pit. Sitting across from a woman with soft eyes and a notepad, Jason kept his answers short. Tell me how you feel about what happened, she said gently. He swallowed. Betrayed. Humiliated. Angry. The words tumbled out like they'd been waiting for years to be said aloud. But also tired, like I'm carrying a weight that won't lift. She nodded. That's normal. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, but you're here. That's the first step. Jason clenched his fists on his lap. He wasn't used to feeling vulnerable. But there, in that quiet room, he allowed himself to feel the cracks. Slowly, the pieces started coming back. He reconnected with Luis and the guys from work. They were the steady pillars he'd leaned on without realizing it. One evening, Luis clapped him on the back over beers. You're a hell of a man, Jason. Not many would have handled that like you did. Jason smiled, a real one. Thanks, man. Means a lot. Next came the house. After months of scouring listings, Jason found it, a small, battered 2-bedroom fixer-upper on the edge of town. The kind of place most people would overlook. But to Jason, it was hope. He put down the deposit with the last of his savings. That first day inside, the place smelled of dust and neglect. The walls were cracked, the floors warped, and the bathroom tiles cracked like shattered promises. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Jason spent weekends sanding, painting, and rebuilding every corner. He pulled up old carpet, patched drywall, laid new flooring. Sweat dripped from his forehead and blisters formed on his hands, but every nail hammered felt like a small victory. Neighbors stopped by, curious about the quiet man with the tired eyes and the worn work boots. One afternoon, an older woman from down the street knocked. You doing all this yourself? She asked, watching him spray peeling paint. Jason wiped his brow and nodded. Yeah, it's not fancy, but it's mine. She smiled. Well, if you ever need a hand or a cup of coffee, I'm just next door. Jason nodded. I'll take you up on that. Work followed. Jason took out a small business loan and started his own contracting company, Land and Construction, a name he chose deliberately as a reminder. The first contracts were small, decks, fences, remodeling kitchens for friends and neighbors. But he was meticulous, honest, reliable. Word spread. One client said, Jason is the kind of guy you can trust. He won't cut corners or leave you hanging. Another joked, he's like a machine, quiet but steady. Months later, he hired Luis as his foreman. They worked side by side again, but this time, Jason was his own boss. Then there was Emily. He met her at the community hospital during a charity build event. She was a trauma nurse, direct, empathetic, no nonsense. They clicked immediately. Emily was honest about her own scars and never sugarcoated the world. One evening, they sat on Jason's porch after a long day of work. I like that you don't pretend everything's perfect, she said, lighting a cigarette. Life's messy. People are messy, but we keep going. Jason looked at her and felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. I'm tired of playing the victim, he said quietly. It's time I live for me. Emily smiled, touching his hand. Good, because you deserve that. Vanessa, meanwhile, was a ghost. Jason hadn't heard from her in weeks, until one rainy afternoon. His phone buzzed with a text. Can we talk? I made a mistake. We had something real. Jason stared at the message, the screen illuminating the room's dim light. He typed back slowly. Yeah, we did. Then you spit on it. He hit send and put the phone down. Jason exhaled deeply and looked around his freshly painted living room. It wasn't much, but it was his. He wasn't the man he was before. He was something stronger. He was rising again. Chapter 10. Poured, set, hardened. They say concrete doesn't bend. Concrete doesn't forgive. It hardens into the exact shape you pour it into, locking in every crack, every imperfection, every scar forever. That day, when I filled Brandon's Escalade with wet cement, I didn't just destroy a car. I set something inside me, too. I poured my rage, my heartbreak, my humiliation, and when it hardened, it became a foundation. I remember the night after I caught them, Vanessa and Brandon, tangled in my bed, laughing at me, mocking me with those cruel words. I sat on the cold floor outside that bedroom door, shaking, not from fear, not from pain, but from the rawest kind of rage. It wasn't the betrayal that shattered me. It was the laughter, the contempt in her voice. "Let me finish. My loser husband will be home soon." The words echoed in my head like a hammer against glass. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't even cry. I just sat, waiting for something to break. But nothing broke. Instead, something hardened. I buried myself in work, in therapy, in building a new life from the wreckage. I learned that pain doesn't have to be a prison. It could be a forge. And I wasn't about to be forged into a victim. The house I bought was more than just walls and a roof. It was my redemption project. Each nail I hammered, every wall I painted, every floorboard I replaced, they were pieces of me healing. Blood, sweat, and blisters became my new currency. And slowly, the cracked foundation of my life found strength. Emily was part of that strength. She didn't judge me for the past. She just saw the man I was trying to become. The trauma nurse with steady hands and a fierce heart. One night, we escaped the city noise and drove up to her family's cabin nestled deep in the woods. The sky was clear, stars scattered like diamonds, and a fire crackled between us, casting warm shadows. Emily laughed at a bad joke I told. I laughed back, the sound light and free, like it hadn't been in years. I felt alive. I looked into the flames, thinking about all that had happened, the lies, the revenge, the fallout. How betrayal hardened me. But revenge? Revenge set me free.